In the video titled Automation Part 1, we saw how to associate a transaction object to the task relative to recording travel ticket reservations. As we continue with our process diagram, once the reservation has been recorded, we must determine whether the passenger is one of the company's customers or not. This implies that, as we enter the reservation data into the screen of the reservation transaction, when the individual booking is not a customer, we will not enter a value in the customer ID attribute. To assess the customer, we double-click on the connector that links the exclusive gateway "Is the passenger a customer?" with the Record Customer task, and we will be opening a window of the conditions editor. To determine whether we enter a value or not, we type reservation.customerID equals 0. Note that we use the transaction's name to identify the customer ID attribute, in order to determine the attribute that is foreign key in the reservation transaction, corresponding to the customer ID attribute that is primary key of the customer transaction. Now let's press OK and get back to the diagram. We've already entered a condition in the connector labeled No. However, it's not necessary to enter a condition opposite to the previous one in the connector labeled with Yes, because we'd already indicated it as default. In this case, if the condition entered in the No is not accomplished, then the program flow will automatically continue through the Yes connection. Now let's click on the Record Customer task and its application property and associate it with the customer transaction. We will see that the relevant data customer ID is created. Now let's press OK and execute our process diagram for the first time. But before we do that, let's complete the conditions of the other gateways in the diagram so we don't get an error in the execution. We only have one more, so we double-click on the connection that links the exclusive gateway "Do you make another reservation?" with the ticket reservation transaction, and, for the time being, we set its value as true. Further ahead, we will set the corresponding condition for it. To execute our diagram, we right-click on the diagram name and select Run. Since this is the first time we execute the diagram, the database will be created as well as the tables that will store the definitions of the process we model. This information is called metadata and is managed by the workflow engine for executing and administering processes. After the specification, generation and compilation of the KB's objects are complete, we will see the start of a window in the browser showing a main window of GXFlow client. This application enables us to execute, monitor, and manage the execution of processes. It's divided into 3 sections. At the top is a header with the date, time, and user that's logged in, which in this case is the workflow administrator. And to the left is an options menu. The section in the middle is an inbox where we can view the tasks that are pending and have been assigned to the logged in user. Since we haven't defined roles or users yet, we can see that the user assigned by default is the workflow administrator, which will be capable of viewing and executing all the processes defined. At the top, in the incoming box, we can see several buttons for executing actions on the tasks. When we focus on the contents of the incoming box, a subject column that shows Flight Ticket Reservation, the name of our process, and in the task column is the ticket reservation task. To execute the ticket reservation task, we can press the Execute button. As we expected, we can see that the reservation transaction opens up for us to enter the reservation. We leave the identifier with no value because it's auto-numbered, and select today's date, then type value 1 to indicate that the reservation is for a passenger who's not one of the agency's customers. So we do not know the passenger's customer identifier, and that's why we leave it at 0. We will also leave empty the checkbox indicating whether the reservation is available or not, because this will be evaluated further ahead. We press Confirm, and we'll see that the record was added correctly. Then we press X to close the form. In the inbox, we will see that the task status has changed to In Process. This indicates that the task is ready to be sent, so we press Send. We can see that the task that's now pending for execution is Record Customer. Looking at our process diagram, we can see that upon finalizing the ticket reservation task, where the reservation transaction was executed, the process flowed to the exclusive gateway, "Is the passenger a customer?" Then, the condition we had entered in the connector labeled with no was evaluated. Note that, in the condition, we only make reference to the value of the customer ID attribute in the reservation, without specifying the reservation involved. As we said before, for each primary key in a transaction, one piece of relevant data is created that's mapped with the value of the attribute. The relevant data will contain the value of the reservation ID attribute that was instanced upon creating the reservation. So, that value will be known throughout the diagram, and our position will always be in that reservation. Since we left customer ID with no value, the condition will be fulfilled, and the following task executed will be record customer, as the incoming tray indicated. To execute the task, we first select it and then press the execute button. We can see that the customer transaction screen opens up for us to enter the individual corresponding to the reservation as a new customer for the travel agency. Once we confirm the entry, we must associate the customer just created with the reservation we'd entered.